Hello and welcome, everyone. I am Sarah Snell Cook, your host here at the Credit Union Connection. I am joined by the famous Andy Janning. Welcome.
Good to see you, Sarah. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. And we see each other all the time, a little bit nowadays. We've been working together on this on this podcast, Overdrawn, which is very different from anything that's ever been in credit union. So, Andy, I don't know if you want to give a little background on yourself and maybe just a blurb about the podcast so we don't ruin the rest of the show.
Yeah, no, I first of all, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for calling me the famous guy and letting me blush and turn the shade of the chair that's behind me. So that's super cool. That's going to be super great tape. I've been in credit unions for almost 3 decades now and love this industry, love what it's about. And I'm also, I love all of it. I mean, if we're talking about people helping people, we're talking about being cooperative. I love all elements of it. And I want to be able to tell with this particular show, I want to be able to tell stories about what happens when we don't always live up to our principles. I think that's a story that we have to talk about as well. And then what happens though, what fills in that breach? What fills in that gap? And that's one of the things that before I get into the premise of the show, I want to be really clear that yes, this first season is about a really tragic situation that happened to a small credit union in Western Pennsylvania. But it also showed me, I think, some of the best elements of our industry as well. I think that's been
Mhm.
something that's been really powerful to experience. So, Overdrawn, like you mentioned, is a serialized investigative documentary podcast. That's really a lot of words to say that this isn't just two people sitting in a studio talking about stuff. This is a long form documentary work to talk about a situation that at the time didn't really get a lot of attention. It's about the liquidation of a credit union in Western Pennsylvania that went under in early 2020 at the height of the pandemic. And a couple of years later, more came out about what happened at that credit union. That was basically a case of insider theft. And the trades ran with it. It made a few headlines here and there, but then everybody moved on. My interest in this is going back to find out what happened afterwards. How did it affect the people of the town? The town that this was set in, town that this happened in. It's a town called Beaver, Pennsylvania. It's only about 4,400 people. It's the quintessential American small town. And this particular credit union was tightly woven into the fabric of this town for over 5 decades. When something like that goes away, there's a cost. There's what rushes in to fill that up, and what does it leave behind for everybody else. So this show is about crime and cost and consequence, and that's what this first season is going to be all about, using this case of a small credit union in Western Pennsylvania as the entry point.
Now, you don't have to get any details, but I would like to know how you're defining cost and consequence.
I'm putting it first and foremost in human terms. Yes, I mean we can look at the spreadsheets and we can see from a dollar standpoint what happened and what caused the collapse. And those were the numbers that really I think, got people's eyebrows shooting to hairlines. But for me, first and foremost, it's about the human toll that this took. What happened to the credit union that had to kind of pick up the pieces from this? What happened to people in the town that were affected by the collapse of this credit union? What happened to the people at the center of it? Those stories really haven't been told. And so I want to find a way to bring those narratives out to kind of show that when something like this happens, that there's a ripple effect that lasts far longer than the headlines do. And I think that's instructive for us, certainly as an industry, but I think it's also useful for us as human beings to realize that there's far more going on underneath the surface than really any of us know.
And I know from some of the little tidbits you've told me, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's like that image of the iceberg where only the top little peak is
Hmm.
showing through.
That's where like if you go to the podcast website, overdrawnpodcast.com, the very top image is this what looks like a ball of yarn with a little string pulling out of it. And when you pull on it, you uncover a whole bunch of other stuff. And that's what has really been compelling about this for me, is that I kind of went into this going, it's going to be a pretty much of a straight line story, and it's not. You pull on one thread and like four other things come out. And I think that's where, again, and when you pull on that and other things come out, there's real people at the end of that.
Hmm.
There's real human lives at stake here. And balancing all of those perspectives, I think is something that I want to do with this season. I don't want to relitigate the case. This isn't gotcha journalism, but there's far more complexity to it than I think people have seen. And I think it's a far more compelling story than I thought. And I am hoping that listeners will agree.
Just so everybody knows, season one trailer is out and up on the
It
site
is.
that Andy just mentioned,
Yeah.
overdrawnpodcast.com. Just another little plug there for you.
Get it.
And one of the things you kind of talked about in this last reporter's notebook, which also people should be signing up for, I'll include the link in this article. We have a wait list that you can get first little tidbits from Andy, as well as you'll get notified of the when every episode drops. So, but Andy, can you give us a little something you haven't shared yet in the reporter's notebook?
So two things have stood out to me. And again, I'm keeping a lot of stuff close to the vest because I do want to reveal it on the show. I'm just like that. The other thing too, there's still some facts I'm kind of chasing down. But two things have really stood out to me. One is it's been 6 years since this credit union collapsed, and people are still mad about it. You talk to some of the folks that have been associated with it, that were directly affected by it, and those emotions are still raw. The emotions are very much there. This wasn't just something that happened on paper. This happened to people. That was the first surprising element to me. The second was how many people still don't want to talk about it.
Mm.
How many people basically have kind of shut the door in my face or left me on red or just ghosted me completely. And they've all been very respectful about it, for the most part. I really haven't had anybody, saying anything really bad. But
GTF out.
yeah, but there is still, I think, from the feedback that I've received from different sources, that there is a pretty significant unwillingness to talk about this particular case. And I think has that is what has drawn me, no pun intended, to it, to find out what that is and challenge my own assumptions about why people may not want to talk about it. And so those two surprises, I think, are in some ways some of the narrative force behind what this season is going to look like. And it's a journey that for me has been very, it's been the hardest story I've ever reported. It's been the hardest documentary project I've ever worked on. It's also been arguably one of the most fulfilling. So, like I said, I'm hoping, I can't wait for listeners to come along with me.
So this isn't your first rodeo either. You've done documentaries before. Why don't you talk a little bit about your previous experience?
Yeah, so I love telling stories. I love focusing on real people and talking about kind of where they go and the point A to point B in the messy middle. That has been kind of infused in my career, first in talent development and now as documentary storytelling, all this other stuff. Back in 2019, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And a few months afterwards, the National Credit Union Foundation gave me the opportunity to say, hey, we want you to do a documentary about the financial toxicity of cancer. And that was Gigi Highland at the time, who was the executive
Mm.
director. And one of the very first lessons I learned in documentary filmmaking is that when Gigi Highland asks you something, you say yes and you don't question it. That really gave me an opportunity to use my storytelling and documentary heart on a national stage and create a 7-part documentary called Side Effects that I think remains one of the largest documentary projects ever done in financial services. And to just try and educate people about, here's this problem that hides in plain sight. And from there, I've been able to tell stories about how the individual costs of cancer, to help also work with the great folks at St. Cloud Financial Credit Union up in St. Cloud, Minnesota, to start a foundation called the Tri-Unity Foundation, which gives cash grants up to $10,000 to credit union members across the country who are in financial distress because of cancer, of terminal cancer and other life-threatening illnesses. So I got to serve as their storyteller for a little while and document the impact of their work as well. So definitely link that in the show notes. Try unityfoundation.org. They're doing amazing work. So all of that to say is this particular project has always been kind of on my bucket list to be able to talk about crime and cost and consequence. Those three C's have been a little bit of a kind of the green light out in the distance for me. So when I had the opportunity to put this together and then speak to you about it and say, hey, I've got this, I think, relatively nutty idea. Do you wanna maybe put it out there? And when you said yes, I'm going, okay. So that for me is this is just kind of a natural progression in my storytelling career, and I can't wait to see where it goes next.
Yeah, when you brought it to me, I was so excited because it's such it, and as you've gone along, I'm even more excited to be a distribution partner through the Credit Connection because it is nutty. It got nuttier, I think, than you expected.
It did, and not, I mean, I also want to not get ahead of get over my skis here, and
Mm.
and make wild, outlandish claims and get a whole bunch of clickbaity stuff. That's not what this is about. Again, this isn't gotcha journalism. I'm not trying to say, well, I know, I looked at this and I know better. It's like, no, this is where the paper leads. This is where the people lead. This is where the stories lead. This is where the truth leads. What you do with that as a listener is completely up to you. But why this happened in this particular town, there is definitely you can see a through line. You can see the connections there. And I think it's a journey that will definitely be worth people's listens.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I'm going to step way back in history, way back.
Yeah,
I'll bet you and I and only a few others are old enough to remember. So you started out as an HR person
I did.
in
Yeah.
credit unions. I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm supposed to name the credit union or not.
That's,
Forum Credit
yep.
Union,
Form.
a very progressive credit union, larger credit union
Hmm.
in Indiana. And how did you get into doing storytelling, journalism, documentary kind of
Oh
work?
gosh.
Because your ethics of as a former recovering reporter, you're following all the rules and that weren't trained into you, kind of, but maybe another way.
Yeah, so first of all, Forum Credit Union was better to me than I ever deserved. I got to work with literally a Indiana Credit Union League Hall of Famer, Jenny Budrow. She was my supervisor for my entire time there. Their CEO now, Doug True, is one of the best that our industry has ever seen. That entire culture, that entire credit union gave me the opportunity to just to basically kind of try new things, to rapid prototype and break stuff and fail and learn from it. And so when they hired me in 1998, again, going way, 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 way back when my hair was red at the time, they hired me to create their training department from the ground up. And they had no formal training. They were about 300 million in assets at that time. And with collaborating with internal subject matter experts and building a team, we built a lot of programs, helped support their $700 million in growth, in asset growth. And during that time, like I said, I got to kind of scratch a lot of itches when it came to storytelling, when it came to using video and audio and trying to tell here's what's really going on, not just talk about butts and seats or talk about how happy people were with the programs. Got to really talk about, hey, this is where this person was, here's where they are now, here was the effect of that. And Forum, I was really grateful to have, we got 8 state and national awards for excellence in talent development. And that was some nice validation. And I would not be speaking to you here today if I did not have that framework, that foundation to be able to try a lot of things that I'm trying today at scale. If I didn't have Forum first and foremost in me, because they took a chance on me. Let's be honest. I was working for a bank for 10 years before then. And then I kind of went to the interview with Forum on a lark. There was an ad for a corporate trainer, and I was working for town in corporate training for a bank in town. I've been with them for 10 years, like I said. And I went to that interview thinking, I'm not going to get it. And then the other thought was, little rinky dink credit union. I'm going to go in there and they're not going to know what to do with me because I'm a big bad banker. And literally within one interview with Jenny Budrow, who served up the credit union Kool-Aid, I drank it and I have not looked back since. And
Hmm.
so kind of a chance situation that I didn't really take seriously took me seriously. And I'm glad that it did.
for sure. I mean, everybody who gets into crayons, the crayons get into them, I feel
Right.
like.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And so how did that drive you to where you are now? I mean, you said that you wouldn't be here without that, but like draw the straight lines for people.
Yeah. So when I left, in 2012, I thought, hey, I've got a job that I could stay here until I retire. I've got a wife and two small kids. What would be the next best thing? What would be the smartest thing for me to do? I know I'll start my own company because, of course. And so since 2012, I had my own business about doing speaking, consulting, and leadership development, kind of a natural continuation of all the things I did at Forum. And then when my wife got sick in 2019, everything shifted. Everything shifted for me. Not to say that anything I was doing before then didn't have value. I think it was just setting me up for and crystallizing what was important to me. Going through that experience with my wife, who is the absolute single strongest and best human being I have ever met in my life, seeing what she went through and realizing that we weren't the only ones. I wanted to I wanted to document what she was going through while also at the same time connecting with other people and kind of hearing their stories as well. One of the things that I did when she got sick, I did a something called the Breast Cancer Portrait Project, which was taking portraits of people with breast cancer. Creative title, because I'm creative like that. And literally, I just did a photo shoot saying, hey, if you're in the Indianapolis area and you have breast cancer and you want to have your portrait taken and share your insights and wisdoms in your journey, I'd love to hear it. And certainly that was an amazing time to photograph these amazing women, hear their perspectives, but to see them come around my wife in between shots and listen to her and become literally her pink sisters, that's community. That's people
Hmm.
helping people. And so I thought, I want to learn more about this. I want to honor what's going on here. So I I documented my wife's journey first and foremost as a way to heal, as a way to kind of remember what was going on. Humans have an unparalleled capacity for forgetting. We are wired to forget our accomplishments. We are wired to forget all the good things that happen. That's why we say the days are long, but the years are short. I want to flip that. And if I can do that with stories of real life heroes that are laying out the best of themselves to make humanity better, then also while at the same time telling stories about when that breaks and why it does and the very human reasons why it does and lift that up,
Hmm.
then that's what pulls me forward. I have no designs of being the next Ken Burns. I have no designs of being I have no desire for fame and fortune. I just want to be able to tell good stories about great people.
Hmm. And that's exactly the line, the line that
Mhm.
brings you to today, to the Overdrawn podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But why financial crime?
I think it's one of the crimes that I think invites a lot of scorn and judgment. One of the big questions I've received when I talk to people about this case or when I interview them, one of the first questions I get is, how'd you learn about this? Why are you talking to me? Which I think is interesting because I think this isn't for them. It's like this was they they didn't really want to talk about it. The more compelling question, though, the more compelling reaction I get from people is, well, I can't believe that person did that. I can't believe they did that. The other half of that sentence that they don't typically say is because I would never do that.
Mm,
So I think when financial crimes hit, I think there is this sense of, well, I'm immune to it. Those people that did that, that's clearly something that was wrong with them, but this isn't, I'm better than that. And I'm not trying to shatter that preconception, but I am trying to say, let's look under the hood because
mm,
you're going to find that there's a lot more going on here than what you realized. And like I said, I'm not trying to defend or prosecute or defend anyone. I just want people to have the full picture of what happens when something like this happens because it's not it's not an easy answer. There are people directly associated with this case who to this day cannot give me easy answers and it confounds them. They have no idea. And so I think that's that complexity and I think that ambiguity I think is something to be examined and looked at carefully and humanely So we can also kind of ask ourselves the question, what would I do?
Mhm. Absolutely. Love that. And I know as somebody who tries to tell stories, I love hearing yours, all of yours. It's so compelling when you go out and speak and stuff. So like and the voice. This is an audio podcast, that voice. I mean, if only you could get the hair
Oh,
in
thank you.
too.
It's all Photoshop. It's all Photoshop. But that's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when it was red too.
Yeah, yeah, I'm telling you, man, it's redheads, we don't go gray. We just go from red to white. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's been I tell people when my get asked like what's your hair color and I say red and they look at me like, "Really? Are you really redhead?" Yeah. So I'm still holding on to a little bit there. Still holding
Yeah,
on.
yep, for sure. So, Andy, I always allow my guests to have final thoughts, and you're a recurring guest here. What would you like to leave our creating audience with?
This is still one of the best jobs in the world to be able to work in and for credit unions. There is still so much promise and there's so much opportunity ahead of us. Yes, this particular show is talking about what happens when things break. But like I said, what comes in afterwards dark times are always followed by some people's brightest moments. And our industry was created to help people in the worst seasons of their lives when financial hardship and sickness and life is just raining down on them. I still believe in our movement. I still believe in our industry. I still believe that our best days are ahead of us. And if the stories that I'm telling set in our little corner of the financial services pond can help us do that better, more responsibly, more transparently, more accurately, more humanely, then that's a pretty good day at the office.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric.